Take a good look at that familiar gray N logo. It is everywhere right now. You see it on the feet of the late Steve Jobs in archival footage, all over the feeds of the most viral TikTok influencers, and even strutting down the high-fashion runways in Paris. It is the ultimate main character energy for the 2030s. According to the latest financial updates from CNBC, New Balance is absolutely crushing the competition. While Nike seems to be tripping over its own laces and losing market share, New Balance reported a staggering $9.2 billion in revenue with a 19% growth rate. They have successfully branded themselves as the authentic alternative, the quiet luxury of the sneaker world that supposedly does not need flashy celebrity endorsements to survive. But let's be real for a second. In this business, logos are often just incredibly expensive masks used to hide some very uncomfortable truths. While you see handcrafted American quality and artisan spirit, the Federal Trade Commission sees a convenient legal loophole. While you feel the cozy comfort of an apolitical dad shoe, the internet remembers the dark days when they were labeled the official shoes of white people. It is time to peel back the layers of gray suede and see what is actually under the hood. Is it genuine craftsmanship, or is it just a masterclass in corporate gaslighting? Let's look past the branding and find the untold story of New Balance. Let's talk about the biggest flex in the New Balance playbook, the Made in USA tag. In a world where every other sneaker giant has outsourced their entire soul to massive factories in Vietnam or Indonesia, New Balance stands tall in New England. They want you to envision a cozy workshop in Maine or Massachusetts where rugged American artisans handcraft your 574 or 990 V6 with the same care a watchmaker gives a Rolex. It is a powerful image. It creates a sense of patriotic pride and justifies that eye-watering $200 price tag. But here is the cold, hard reality. It is a total skill issue on the part of the consumer if you think you are getting a 100% American product. To understand this game, we have to look at the Federal Trade Commission, or the FTC. Their rules for the Made in USA label are incredibly strict. For a product to carry that prestigious tag, it must be all or virtually all made in the United States. That means every single component, every stitch, and every bit of labor should happen on American soil. Nike cannot do it. Adidas cannot do it. Even New Balance cannot actually do it for their mass-market shoes. So what did their legal team do? They found a loophole so large you could drive a freight ship through it. They created their own internal standard called 70% domestic value. If you look closely at the fine print on their boxes, New Balance admits that their Made in USA sneakers only contain a domestic value of 70% or greater. Now, 70% might sound like a passing grade in high school, but in the world of premium manufacturing, that 30% gap is where the real money is made. Think about it. What are the most expensive, high-tech parts of a modern running shoe? It is not the laces or the little piece of suede on the heel. It is the midsole tech, the end cap cushioning, the complex carbon plates, the structural foam. These are the brains and the heart of the shoe. And guess where those are often sourced from? You guessed it, the same overseas supply chains in Asia that New Balance claims to be so different from. In 2021, this clever branding finally got ratioed in a massive class action lawsuit. Consumers felt they were being gaslit by the giant American flags plastered all over the marketing. The lawsuit claimed that New Balance was intentionally misleading people into paying a premium for shoes that were essentially assembled like a Lego set using foreign parts. New Balance's defense was basically, we put a label on the box saying it is only 70% domestic. It is not our fault if you did not read the fine print. That is peak corporate energy. They sell you the dream of American craftsmanship while quietly importing the expensive tech from the lowest cost producers. When you pay $220 for a pair of 992s, you are not just paying for labor in Maine. You are paying a 40% markup for the privilege of feeling like you are supporting local industry. It is a brilliant bit of supply chain arbitrage. They import the complex, expensive components, then perform the final assembly in the States to slap on the flag. They get the marketing benefits of being a homegrown hero without the actual cost of making a shoe from scratch in America. It is a brilliant play, but let's call it what it is. A very calculated illusion designed to exploit your nostalgia. If you thought the 70% illusion was a heavy blow, wait until we talk about 2016. That was the year New Balance experienced the ultimate corporate L. It is a case study in how a brand can get absolutely wrecked when it tries to play the political game without understanding the rules. Imagine this, you are a brand built on comfort, stability, and being the reliable choice for suburban dads. You have zero main character energy in the political world. But then, a single quote from a top executive turns your boring gray sneakers into the most controversial footwear on the planet. It all started right after the 2016 election. Matthew LeBreton, who was the vice president of public affairs for New Balance, gave a quote to a reporter from the Wall Street Journal. He said that the Obama administration had turned a deaf ear to them and that, frankly, with President-elect Trump, they felt things were going to move in the right direction. Now, context is everything here. LeBreton was talking specifically about trade policy. New Balance was one of the few companies still manufacturing in the United States, and they hated the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or the TPP. They believed the TPP would make it even harder for American-made products to compete with cheap imports. From a pure business and trade perspective, his comment made sense. But in the hyper-polarized environment of 2016, nobody cared about the nuances of trade tariffs. The internet responded with a level of vitriol that was truly next level. People began filming themselves burning their New Balances in their backyards or flushing them down toilets. It was a massive PR disaster. On Twitter, the brand was getting ratioed every single hour. They tried to backtrack. They issued statements saying they were a 90-year-old company with a long history of supporting American manufacturing and that they did not endorse bigotry. But the damage was done, and then things got even weirder and much darker. The Daily Stormer, a notorious neo-Nazi website run by Andrew Anglin, officially declared New Balance the official shoes of white people. He wrote that New Balance was the uniform of the alt-right. He encouraged his followers to buy them as a sign of racial solidarity. This is the definition of a brand's worst nightmare. You go from being the shoe of Steve Jobs to being the shoe of white supremacy overnight because of one poorly timed comment about trade policy. It was a masterclass in how corporate gaslighting fails. They tried to pretend it was just about jobs and manufacturing, but the public had already decided that the N on the side stood for something much more sinister. New Balance spent years trying to wash that stain off their sneakers. They had to pivot hard into the hypebeast culture and high-fashion collaborations just to change the conversation. They needed people to stop thinking about 2016 and start thinking about how cool a gray 99 V3 looks with a $500 hoodie. It was an expensive, slow process of brand rehabilitation. They learned the hard way that when you try to pander to a specific political movement to get trade benefits, you inherit all the baggage that comes with it. They wanted the protectionist trade policies of the Trump era, but they did not want the association with the far right. You cannot have one without the other in the modern attention economy. This incident exposed the fragility of their authentic American hero brand. If you wrap yourself in the flag to sell shoes, you better be prepared for what happens when that flag starts being used as a weapon in a culture war. New Balance thought they were playing a game of chess about trade tariffs, but they were actually playing a game of survival in a world where your brand identity can be hijacked in a single afternoon. It serves as a reminder that in this game, your reputation is only as strong as your last public statement. Stay sharp because even the most boring dad shoe can become a political lightning rod if the wrong people start claiming it. If you are currently wearing a pair of 550S or 2002 RS, you have officially been caught in the net of the most sophisticated hype machine in the footwear industry. How did a brand that was once the punchline of every dad joke in America suddenly gain such massive main character energy? The answer is hype arbitrage. They took something boring, something designed for podiatrists and marathon runners from the 1980s, and sold it back to you as elite, curated luxury. It is a total skill issue on the part of the hype beasts who think they are being unique by wearing the same gray shoes as their grandfathers. The mastermind behind this transformation is the manipulation of scarcity. New Balance realized that they could not compete with Nike on pure volume or celebrity star power. So, they changed the game. They partnered with the kings of aesthetic like Teddy Santis from Aimé Leon Dore and the design minimalists at JJJ Jound. By releasing extremely limited quantities of these collaborations, they created an artificial hunger. They turned the orthopedic aesthetic into a symbol of being in the know. If you are wearing a standard 990 V6, you are just a guy with comfortable feet. But if you are wearing the Santis edition in a slightly different shade of olive green, suddenly you are a fashion icon. It is the ultimate corporate gaslighting. They convinced you that paying $300 for a shoe that looks like it belongs in a nursing home is a sign of superior taste. But here is the real secret sauce. New Balance is a private company. This is a massive common NBW in terms of business strategy. Because they do not have to answer to Wall Street analysts every 90 days, they do not have the same pressure for infinite quarterly growth that plagues Nike or Adidas. This allows them to be patient. They can intentionally keep supply low to maintain the hype. They can kill off a popular model just when it is peaking to ensure it does not become too mainstream. It is a level of market manipulation that public companies simply cannot afford to do. They are playing a long game of brand equity while everyone else is chasing the next quarterly dividend. However, while they are winning the vibe check, the data tells a much grittier story. New Balance loves to talk about their commitment to the planet. Their marketing is filled with lush greenery and talk of a sustainable future. But let's look at the numbers from their 2024 sustainability report. While they were busy becoming the cool brand on TikTok, their Scope 3 emissions, which represents the total carbon footprint of their entire supply chain, actually increased by 27% recently. They are selling you a clean and green image, but the industrial reality of making millions of sneakers is anything but green. It is a classic case of being ratioed by the facts. They have mastered the art of selling boring as elite. They have used their private status to manipulate the market in ways their competitors can only dream of. And they have done it all while convincing you that you are part of an authentic, sustainable movement. In reality, you are just paying a premium to participate in a very well-orchestrated scarcity play. The gray suede might feel like heritage, but the strategy is pure, cold-hearted hype arbitrage. So we have reached the bottom line. The balance sheet is open and the numbers do not lie even if the marketing does. New Balance is currently winning the sneaker wars, not necessarily because they are reinventing the wheel, but because they have successfully exploited a very specific moment in our cultural history. They are the primary beneficiaries of what we call the Great Vibe Shift. For years, Nike dominated by selling us the dream of the superhuman athlete, the elite competitor, and the futuristic tech that promised to make you run faster and jump higher. But as the 2020s rolled in, we all got a bit tired. We stopped wanting to be the athlete and started wanting to look like we had inherited a villa in the Hamptons. This is where the genius of New Balance truly shines. They took dad tech, the bulky, orthopedic, and frankly uncool designs of the 1980s and 90s, and rebranded them as the peak of the old money aesthetic. It is a masterful piece of social engineering. By staying private and keeping their supply chains tight, they created an aura of exclusivity around shoes that were originally designed for people with fallen arches. They convinced a generation of hypebeasts that wearing a chunky gray shoe is a sign of quiet confidence and intellectual depth. It is the ultimate flex to look like you do not care about fashion while wearing a $300 sneaker. But let's look at the actual cost of that confidence. When you buy into the Made in USA narrative, you are participating in a very expensive form of theater. As we uncovered in the dossiers, you are paying a 40% markup for the privilege of a tiny flag on the tongue. That premium price is not going toward a 100% American-made product. It is going toward a product where 30% of its value, including the most complex and expensive components, comes from the same overseas factories that everyone else uses. You are paying a patriotism tax that mostly feeds a corporate bottom line rather than a local workforce. It is high-level supply chain arbitrage disguised as a heritage brand. And then there is the political baggage. The 2016 incident was not just a PR fluke. It was a revelation of how the brand truly operates. They wanted the protectionist trade policies that would benefit their specific business model, and they were willing to risk their reputation to get them. The fact that they were then claimed by the alt-right as their official footwear is a permanent stain that no amount of Teddy Santis collaborations can truly wash away. It serves as a warning that when a company wraps itself in a flag, it is usually doing so to protect its profits, not its people. Even their sustainability claims are getting ratioed by the actual data. Increasing your carbon emissions by 27% while promoting a green image is peak corporate gaslighting. They want you to feel good about your purchase while they continue to scale a massive, resource-intensive industrial machine. In this game, loyalty to a brand is often just another word for being uninformed. You are not a member of a community, you are a data point in a very successful marketing funnel. New Balance is winning right now because Nike tripped over its own laces, but do not think for a second that the N on your feet makes you a rebel or an intellectual. You are just a consumer who bought into a very well-curated illusion of authenticity. The gray suede eventually fade, and the hype will move on to the next brand that figures out how to exploit your nostalgia. But the facts remain on the ledger. You are paying for a story, not just a shoe. And in this economy, that story is getting more expensive by the day. Stay sharp and stay informed. Remember, knowledge is your only leverage in this game. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like and subscribe to join our community. This was Behind the Logo, and I'll catch you on the flip side.